Child continues with Cinderella.
Sunday on HBO.
Simply the best choice on TV. HBO.
(1974). For the first time in history, a political crisis forces an American president out of office.
Thomasville, the new Thomasville Home Furnishing Store, 2301 South Westwood Boulevard between Pico and Olympic in West Los Angeles.
Join Carrie Fisher as she investigates life and love in La La Land.
I love my work. I love my dog. My husband, yes, but...
Let's go L.A.
An A&E premiere. Carrie Fisher, The Hollywood Family. Tonight on A&E.
A&E's Ancient Mysteries is brought to you in part by Toyota and their full line of quality cars and trucks. Toyota, I love what you do for me.
A remote island in the Pacific holds many secrets. What are these monolithic statues? Who built them? And why did they stop? The story of Easter Island, next on Ancient Mysteries.
$1,500 years ago, a weary group of men, women and children reached the goal of a grueling journey in open canoe across the Pacific Ocean. Their safe arrival at a tiny island marked the beginnings of an unparalleled stone culture. Thousand souls live an isolated existence on Easter Island today. The missionaries arrived in the last century, and the society is basic but Western. Today's islanders are devoutly Christian, but their beliefs and worship are pervaded by the gods and symbols of their ancestors. The island is overshadowed by its past. The statues that draw tourists and scientists to Easter Island are the remnants of a religion that once dominated a busy Stone Age society. But archaeology has shown that the statues gave way to a cult centered on carvings of birdmen. Birdmen that were modeled on the frigate bird that roams the Pacific. And the birdmen are still ingrained in the minds of the people today who cling to these last fragments of their lost culture.
En el nombre del Padre, del Hijo y del Espíritu Santo. Amén.
But to find out why the carvings were made and what the statues stood for, we have to turn to the people themselves. for science alone cannot tell. This program is about the island world of long ago, about what drove the people who created it, and what happened to them. At the turn of this century, the last few islanders who recalled the pre-Christian era gave their vague memories to a remarkable English lady. Catherine Scoresby Rutledge, in the best intrepid Edwardian tradition, spent a year on Easter Island in 1914. She excavated, surveyed, measured, sketched, and photographed her way across the island. She charted the statues, the archaeological remains of houses, and the rock carvings. She learned the language and recorded the names of the families from which the islanders descended. She drew up a map of the territorial divisions of the tiny island. Her clan map was to prove invaluable to later researchers. For more clues to the island's recent history, she turned to even earlier records. For Mrs. Rutledge was only the latest in a long line of visitors to the most isolated inhabited land on Earth. In 1722, the Dutch Admiral Jacob Roggeveen was searching for the lost continent of the Pacific when he sighted a misty island on Easter Sunday morning. Friendly islanders paddled out to greet their first European. His log notes cultivated land, a peaceful society with chiefs, priests, and worship before certain remarkably tall stone statues. 50 years later, Captain Cook called in. The island he found was very different. Many statues were toppled and seemingly used only as burial sites. The landscape was barren. The few canoes he saw were patched and leaky. The people were still friendly, although many women seemed to have gone into hiding. Only 12 years later, in 1786, the island presented a conflicting picture once more to the Frenchman La Perouse. It was again peaceful and idyllic. He saw cultivation and statues still standing. However, there was incessant stealing. In 1862, a tragedy struck. The guano mines of Peru needed labor. Slave raiders took thousands of Easter Islanders. Even the king and his priests worked the guano. Only 12 islanders returned, and with them, the island welcomed smallpox. The missionaries that followed discouraged the vestiges of the old ways. They finally persuaded most of the people to follow them to Tahiti. But they did record the details of the last of the remarkable Birdman ceremonies that took place each year. By 1877, the island was one desolate sheep ranch, and a population of thousands had been reduced to 111. The legacy of disease, slavery, and Christianity had left a people without a history. The past had been utterly cut off. Mrs. Rutledge had been given the perfect title for her book. To solve the mystery required a new approach. An ethnological expedition of the 1930s set out to observe the islanders' Polynesian culture. They found the people were expert at adapting their forgotten past to suit their present masters. Their Polynesian dances owed less to Polynesia than to the influence of the Scottish sheep farming company that now owned their land and the Chilean government that ruled them from South America. Although the islanders may be confused about their own history, Their ancestors did leave clues as to why the statues were built, and the place it's in a museum. The Museum of Mankind in London holds objects from almost every culture in the world. The material remains found throughout the Pacific are characteristic of the Polynesian culture. Woodworking tools, bark cloth, wood carvings, fishing gear, featherwork. They are the cultural remnants of an ancient civilization founded by the Lapita people. They began to sweep across the Pacific 3,500 years ago, and their descendants are the Polynesians. All these objects are found on islands that have not lost touch with their past, and the same type of objects have been found on Easter Island. Can these other islands reveal anything about the culture of the statue builders?
When you see Easter Island in the East Polynesian context with material objects, you know then they must have other non-material characteristics of East Polynesia. They had elaborate hierarchical social structure with gods, priests, chiefs, and commoners. Now, the religious traditions include the gods, but also the ancestors. Ancestors were very important. And images were carved in the form of ancestors as well as gods. Along with the social structure, there was a very important concept known in Polynesia as mana. Now, this mana was a kind of sacred power, supernatural power that was inherited from the gods to the chiefs and could also be imbued into objects. And these objects were taken to their extreme forms in various places in Polynesia. In Hawaii, they took featherworking to its extreme. In the Marquesas, they tattooed the entire body, taking tattooing to an extreme. In New Zealand, in Hawaii, and other islands, they took woodworking to an extreme. So set within this East Polynesian context, you would expect the Easter Islanders would do a similar thing. And that's exactly what they did. They took stonework to its extreme.
The stonework that Easter Islanders took to extremes was a development from rows of upright slabs found at ceremonial sites throughout East Polynesia. Each slab represented a dead chief, an ancestor. It was against these slabs that the chief sat at ceremonial meetings. When a chief died, no one sat in his place, but his slab and his memory remained. There is one set of memories that has survived on Easter Island to the present day. Legends. The details keep changing, but the basic stories are the same. So maybe there's more to them than meets the ear. Because at first hearing, they seem to us like nonsense. Like this one about the statues that actually walked from the quarry at Ranuraraku.
Now, it's talking about the crawfish these two men found and brought to Ranuraraku to cook. They cooked the lobster, and they all ate. And all of a sudden, this lady came to them and says, "Is there any more?" And they says, "No." She says, "Not even a piece, not even a piece." So she got very angry because they didn't leave any food for her. She stood up and called out the Moais, the statue. From now on, no Moais will walk. No Moais will get up. And all the Moais walking will stop and fall down.
That is the islanders' explanation for the abandoned statue quarry. One famous legend is the battle between two tribes, the Long Ears and the Short Ears.
This is about a war that happened between the Hanau E'epe and Hanau Momoko on the northeast shore of the island. Now, the Hanau E'epe are people that lived in a place called Poike,
ture no te aki kala momoko o te tai hati ki rawa mo to uit maia makamai tenu.
The story goes that the long ears wanted the short ears to clear all the rocks from the Poiki Peninsula. But the short ears rebelled. The long ears retreated to Poiki. There they were betrayed, trapped in a ditch that crosses the island, and all but one burnt to death. Of the ditch, only a faint depression remains. Hidden in tales and riddles, the islanders' history of their home becomes more obscure with each succeeding generation. But perhaps the mistake is to expect them to paint a clear picture at all. To see into the past requires a more subtle approach.
We'll return to the mysteries of Easter Island in a moment, here on A&E.
Toyota Camry, the best car built in America. Toyota's hot, hot, hot. Award-winning precision craftsmanship made it the gold standard. It's Toyota's nationwide clearance, the best time to get the best. Camry, a low $229 a month lease, is designed to clear out the last of the new 95s. Your Toyota dealer has a huge selection, but you'd better hurry. And for a limited time, there's 2.9% financing on all Camrys. Get the deal on the Toyota you want now. This clearance event happens only once a year.
Are you out there, AT&T? Of course you are. You're not going to like this. You know how all along you've been telling us at MCI to put it in writing? Sort of implying that we weren't telling the truth about our savings. Well, approve of the savings statement. We're sending them to our friends and family customers, showing them how they save. Put it in writing. I hate to say it, AT&T, but you asked for it.
Discover X14 Kitchen Cleaner. Watch as X14 challenges Formula 409 on this baked-on grease. Which works better?
The X14 took everything off without scrubbing.
Try X14 Kitchen Cleaner.
I would switch to this right now.
Energizer batteries keep going and go.
Hello, I'm Roger Mudd. Did you know that after 10,000 years, history has finally found a home? On the History Channel. For all of history, all in one place, call your cable operator and make sure you're getting the History Channel.
Now, back to Ancient Mysteries and the story of Easter Island.
The problem of about some of the legends is that we can't approach them literally. We can't take word for word what's said on Easter Island ever, and especially not in some of the legends. Take, for example, the story of the witches. Witches who cast spells over greedy carvers and stopped statues walking stopped them in their tracks walking from the quarry to the platform. What these stories tell us is absolutely nothing about how the statues were moved. Instead, it tells us a great deal about the process of moving on a different level. It tells us about the fact that food was involved, involving payment for work done. It tells us about the fact that ritual was involved, and magic, and spells, secret kinds of things. Basically, all it's saying is that everything associated with the transport of these figures was ritually dictated and very, very special in the lives of the people who participated.
If I look at the famous legend of the battle at Poiki Ditch, first of all, you have one group of people who is trying to get the other group of people to remove all the stones that are on Poiki for more agricultural land. Now, we know there were never any stones on Poiki. Geologically, we know there were no stones on Poiki. So this can't be the reason for having conflict between two groups of people. Poiki Ditch is supposed to be a defensive structure. However, you can walk right around the north end of it. And you can scramble up the broken-down cliffs on the southern edge and walk right around it there. I don't see how it can be a defensive structure. Now, I think the real reason behind the legend for Poiki may come from something a little different. I think the islanders harvested the great Jubea palm trees that grew on Poiki. That is why I think it may have been crucial to the island's history. And that is why Poiki figures in so many of the legends.
Palm trees are no figment of the imagination. Samples from the lake beds have revealed pollen from a forest that once covered the island. Scientists have measured, mapped, and delved into Easter Island and found the remains of where, when, and how the people lived. They have found the houses that were lived in, the crops that were farmed, the fish that were caught, and the means to carve and move the statues. Add in the legends, the historical observation, and the Polynesian background, and you can begin to make deductions about what went on and why.
What I find intriguing is how does a human population keep its numbers in check in a closed biological system? On the one hand, you have finite resources, and on the other, you have a steadily growing human population. There is no disease, there is no birth control that we have any information on, and there are no natural disasters to hold the human population down. So how do they do it? I think it's interesting that about a third of the island's legends involve warfare, and another third of the island's legends include cannibalism.
Hard evidence for cannibal feasts may never be found, but excavation at Anakena, the legendary landing site of the first king, has turned up a massive detail on the activity around its statues. Thousands of artifacts have been found, including pieces of worked coral, interpreted as files for smoothing statues and as ceremonial bowls. And a little local knowledge has helped.
In the case of Easter Island, it is very important to think about the meaning of the word mata, M-A-T-A, mata. Mata meaning a larger social unit, perhaps a tribe, and also the best warriors that led this group was called Mata Toa. The word mata also means eye, eyes that look toward the people, toward the village, eyes that perhaps portray the mana, the powers of the ancestors.
That view of his island's past has supported Rapu's new interpretation of those worked coral objects, an explanation far more likely than that suggested by the archaeology alone.
It is not a ceremonial recipient. It is not a fragment of a coral file. In fact, it is the eyes of the statue, the mata of the living face of our ancestor.
We'll return to the mysteries of Easter Island in a moment, here on A&E.
25 years together. They've just flown by. 25 years of kids, jobs, moving. I didn't just want to bring her back to her favorite place. I wanted to give her something she's only dreamt of.
The 25th anniversary diamond necklace.
Try the Olive Garden's new Mediterranean garlic shrimp, $8.95 for a short time. Enjoy tender shrimp, sautéed with roasted garlic and herbs on a bed of linguine, with free salad or soup and breadsticks. Part of the Italian summer menu, only at the Olive Garden.
Laboratory tests show the Stanley Sharpshooter staple gun requires a mere 19 pounds of force to drive a staple flush. Our competitor's model requires just a bit more. The Sharpshooter, only from Stanley.
A secret meeting.
Mr. Poirot, I'm dreadfully afraid. I'm being poisoned.
Do you know of any reason why your husband should wish you out of the way?
Yes, I do.
Leads to a shocking murder.
She's dead.
Dead? Police arrest the victim's husband, but could they have the wrong man?
We have here a very poignant human drama.
Poirot vows to find who done it on the A&E Mystery Movie. Tuesday on A&E.
It happens only once a year. A Toyota nationwide clearance. The best time to get the best. Avalon, starting at only $23,400. Avalon, Toyota's flagship, is built in America. Get a year-end low lease on Previa, starting at $299 a month. Now's the best time to see your Toyota dealer. They're clearing out the last of the new 95s. To get the deal and the selection on the Toyota you want, you better hurry. Toyota's nationwide clearance event happens only once a year.
10 minutes? Perfect. I'll see you then. Ah, the bubbly. Thank you, buddy. Your door's set. No. 9 minutes. Close. Yes. I got a date in 4.5 minutes.
You flowers?
Hey! Hello. Just a technical problem.
Barry, what's going on in there?
The American Express card. Don't leave home without it. Now, back to ancient mysteries and the story of Easter Island.
The study of the Easter Island ancestors themselves has unearthed surprising detail of the social organization on the island. For example, there is evidence of inbreeding amongst one particular group of the people. It showed up in genetically defective kneecaps.
The genetic condition that we found earlier, the defective kneecap, at these high frequencies here, to some extent here, were quite puzzling, virtually unexplainable at the time. But all one has to do is superimpose a copy of Mrs. Rutledge's clan map of ancient Easter Island. We see these areas fall within the boundaries of the Meru tribe or clan. This, we know from folklore, was a royal tribe or royal lineage. This area was isolated. They were genetically isolated. They were exclusive in their marriage practices. That explains why there was inbreeding in this location.
And inbreeding confirms that the Meru regarded themselves as special and were held in esteem by other islanders. In many parts of the island, the stones have had strange designs carved on them, and those designs seem to cluster into different areas.
What we are doing here is superimposing these design elements on a clan map prepared by Catherine Routledge, showing the different clan divisions all around the island. The designs clustered in significant areas. For example, we have fish hooks only on this coast here. There are none in this area down here.
So the designs appear to be clan markings.
When we find these superimposed on, say, for example, a statue or a topknot which has fallen, it is as if the makers were putting their mark on there saying, I have conquered this particular part of the island and I am now putting my mark on this particular piece of sculpture.
But why were the statues toppled?
There's a very clear indication in the legends that there may have been a belief in the concentration of mana or spiritual power in the heads of chiefs, and in the heads, for example, of sculpture. What leads us to think that that might be the case is that a lot of the sculptures, large numbers of them, are broken at the neck, snapped. In the case of this sculpture, special stones were placed in a strategic place. When this statue fell, its neck broke. And I don't think that was an accident. I think that was meant to be. I think it was meant to be because during that process, the mana would have been destroyed.
And what of the endless Birdman petroglyphs, carvings in the rocks high up at Orongo? Why a cult devoted to birds?
Throughout Polynesia, birds had a tremendous significance for the people. They were messengers to and from the gods, even the gods themselves at times. It must have been an incredible experience for them to see thousands of birds arriving in the springtime and then leaving. And here they were, trapped on this small island, unable to fly away to the gods as the birds could do. Well, here we are surrounded by petroglyphs of the Birdman, and I can measure them, I can describe them, I can draw them, but if we didn't have firm ethnographic evidence for what was going on here, things that the missionaries told us, things that Mrs. Routledge recorded, we really would have no idea what had actually happened here.
This old woman is the last islander alive to remember Mrs. Rutledge and her expedition. She also holds one more clue to the earlier days. It is the tradition of chanting called Kai Kai. Perhaps these rhythms are all that's left of the chants of priests of long ago. Chanting once went not with cats' cradles, but with mysterious wooden rongo-rongo boards that were covered in hieroglyphic carvings. No islander has understood the writing since the slave raids. By unraveling the code of rongo-rongo, many have believed they would discover a chronicle of the past. Many tried, from the missionaries to Mrs. Rutledge, and one man has made it his speciality. A small town in Germany. 30 years ago, a young cryptographer devoted a decade to rongo-rongo. The writing has the unique distinction of being carved on wooden tablets in lines that run alternately in opposite directions and upside down. Even by Easter Island standards, that's taking things to an extreme. Armed with a cast or a drawing of the 24 tablets in existence, he listed 11,975 signs. By cross-referring them with each other, with Easter Island legends, and with other Polynesian traditions, Professor Thomas Bartel is as near as anyone to understanding them.
The best chance to break a system is to try to get an inside view. That is to say, you're observing a distribution patterns of recurring signs and recurring sequences. I'll give you one example. On a famous tablet, we find 30 signs for the moon. 30 times a moon means the length of a month.
In Polynesia, every night of the month is given a name as a night of the moon. On this tablet, the 7th crescent moon shape has another sign attached to its left side, looking a bit like a fruit hanging from a tree. And the name for the 7th night of the moon on Easter Island is the night of the fruit. So fruit is the likely meaning of the sign, leaving only another 11,974 more to decipher. There is little hope of a full picture ever emerging from rongo-rongo. But we do have all that we need to tackle the last question, what happened on Easter Island? The answer may not be right at every turn, but sooner or later you have to take the evidence, the legends, the history and the opinions, throw them all together, step through that dim mirror, and begin at the beginning.
Find out what happened to the people of Easter Island when we return.
We're challenging shoppers to compare X14 mildew stain remover to Tile-X.
Oh, look at that. X14! It changed from almost like black to white. Amazing. Very amazing. X14 is something I would definitely buy.
Class-leading, powerful Toyota Tacoma trucks. It's Toyota's nationwide clearance.
Toyota's hot, hot, hot.
The best time to get your best deal. Get a special $199 a month lease with $199 down on a nicely equipped Tacoma. Your Toyota dealer is clearing out the last of the new 95s. Save on Tacoma option packages. It's your opportunity to get the big Toyota T100 Extra Cab with $2,000 savings on valuable options. Hurry, get the Toyota you want now before they're all gone.
In advertising, they say one of the surest ways to get your message across is to put celebrities in your commercial. We hope they're right.
A&E urges your support because every life is a biography.
Hi, folks. Maurice Clapp here, president of La Brea Chrysler Jeep, LA's consumer-friendly dealer.
I'm here to tell you that this is the place to buy your next used car for sure. Right now, we have a great selection of extra clean vehicles on sale at discount prices. All used cars are given a 40-point inspection in our state-of-the-art service department. And every used car purchased from us is backed by Chrysler's 3-month, 3,000-mile warranty at no extra charge. For your next used car, come to La Brea Chrysler Jeep on La Brea between Melrose and Wilshire.
This is the old way to clean carpet. Heavy, bulky equipment that never deep cleans. Introducing the finest in carpet cleaning, the only method Premier carpet cleaners use on your carpet. Our special method of steam cleaning removes stains and dries within 2 to 3 hours. Call now and get any 3 rooms for $75, any 5 rooms for $125. For the finest in carpet cleaning, call Premier Carpet Cleaning at 1-800-570-5500. That's 800-570-5500.
Now, back to Ancient Mysteries and the story of Easter Island.
A new homeland, fertile, green. Here was a chance for the future. They had brought with them the crops and culture they needed for a new life. The last link with the homeland was the homing frigate bird. It never got there. Easter Island remained unknown. The crops they planted are the only tangible remains of that first landing. All else is just an unshakable race memory. Only legend can say how many people there were or why they'd left their home. Perhaps only a few hundred fleeing from a distant, war-torn Polynesian island. The traces of their activity on this island have lasted till now. Their clearance of the land left a layer of charcoal from coast to coast, generation after generation. The Polynesian way was strict. Elder sons inherited land from the father. The younger sons moved on. New clans carved out new homes. Divisions of land were marked in stone. The royal clan was the Miru, a pure line descended from Hotumatua. From them were chosen priest kings who led the people. Flourishing population, fishermen and farmers, carvers and masons, trading with each other. The people prospered, the settlements increased. By 1000 AD, the entire coast was occupied. There were chiefs, priests, commoners, and craftsmen. It was an ordered world. And each settlement had a ceremonial center, an ahu. Over those first few centuries, the ahu developed into a unique art form. Tradition had come from the homeland, well practiced in wood. But at Ranu Raraku crater, they found a rock of the right evenness and density. They could work in stone. The statues were ancestors. The men who carved them were a guild of craftsmen, highly skilled, highly paid, and with sacred powers. That commissioned their work kept alive the memory and power of its ancestors. Every village had its ahu, and every ahu had its moai. Ancestors whose gaze dominated their lives, and who gave them manna. But the full power of the statues did not emerge until they could see. The manner of the statues responded to the worship of the people. Their power made the crops grow, the fish bite, and the people prosper. For 500 years, the monolithic stone statues were built on Easter Island. For 500 years, the culture, the rituals, and the population grew. Years of hungry people had an inevitable effect on the island. Slash and burn increased and denuded more soil. As more younger sons moved on, so the people spread inland and more trees were cleared. For every palm fruit eaten, another tree could not grow. For every cluster of young leaves used to thatch a home, for every fishing canoe launched, for every statue moved, another tree was felled. The islanders couldn't stop. To survive in the present, they chose to consume the future. And that could not last forever. Within 1,000 years of man's arrival, as the population climbed past 10,000 people, Easter Island had changed. No more palm groves. The Easter Island of today had come into being. All that remains of the palms are the fossilized root canals that can be seen today in the bare, eroded soil. And it did not stop with the trees. The land itself could not sustain such use for long. As the palms went, the soil was exposed to the ocean, rain, and wind. Driving storms eroded the earth. The soil was worn away, leaching and washing its mineral nutrients down the slopes to be lost in the sea. And as the trees were consumed, the wood for canoes disappeared. The islanders had to rely on inshore fish and rock pools. Fish hooks found by archaeologists reflect that change. Competition for food became acute. Legends tell of taboos on eating fish for all but the family of the king. The pressure on the land for crops increased. A vicious spiral of decline had begun. The ingenious islanders tried many things to halt the decline of their island world. They invented walled gardens to protect crops from the wind and to retain water. Chickens were now the only reliable protein supply, and their value reached proportions absurd enough to build fortresses to guard them from thieves. The solution was to build bigger moai to call for more manna from the ancestors. But the statues could not respond. They too could only consume. For bigger statues demanded more trees as rollers and levers. One day, someone cut down the last palm tree, and with it, an era of monoliths of stone rolling across a Pacific island came to an end. Families were forced to worship their ancestors where they lay. The production line in the quarry gradually ground to a halt. Some statues were abandoned as the carvers could not be fed. Others were worshipped still attached to the rock. There was no sudden stop. Instead, a gradual acceptance that they could not afford to carve them. They tried other means to get the manna from their ancestors. Holes were hammered into their faces. Statues and platforms were rebuilt on top of broken heads. But they failed. Famine and competition for food were the new rule. Obsidian, volcanic glass, a weapon of war was created. The worst of Polynesian culture had emerged. A desire to fight viciously. The powers of the priest kings had failed. The warriors took control. For generations, statues were falling on Easter Island. Manna was destroyed. Manna was stolen. The conquerors were ruthless. Everything they defeated, they consumed. The land was scorched and the culture laid waste. Manna was acquired by prowess in war. For the vanquished, safety lay only in the depths of the volcanic ground. Caves were adopted as hiding places. And as the long period of strife continued, changing allegiance, alternate victory and defeat kept the population underground. A new way of life and death. New rituals, cultivation and art developed in the extraordinary volcanic caverns that nature had provided. For there was no other escape. They could not follow the example of their founding ancestors and leave to start anew. There was no wood. There were no canoes. They could not fly away with the birds. But the slide was not into anarchy and chaos. A new order was created, a kind of stability, the Birdman cult. Every year, the migrating seabirds nested on the islet of Motunui. Every year, brave young men competed to find the first egg of the season. The winner swam with it to the shore, to his master, waiting high on the cliffs of Orongo. The master's head was shaved and painted. His grip on the island was total for 1 year. His was the clan that would rule. He was Birdman. He was warrior. He was priest king. His image, as vicious, fighting frigate bird, was carved into the sacred rock. His whim dictated another year of life for his friends, of death and destruction for his foes. But links with the old statue culture were not lost, for the Birdman spent his year in isolation in the sacred quarry. And the last irony is that the birds landing on Motunui were not frigate birds at all. By the end, they had been driven away by the annual egg hunt. The islanders even destroyed their gods. The order of the Birdman brought no prosperity. It had enshrined fear and brutality in ritual. Eventually, his failure is marked by an obsession with fertility. These crude symbols of human vulvae, Kumari on the island, are found etched in the rock and everywhere overlaid on the symbol of the Birdman. It was still a ritualized, structured society. The Easter Islanders had adapted to the destruction of their environment and had survived. But their stability was as fragile as the egg they worshipped. Easter Sunday, 1722. Their island world was changed forever.
We'll return to the mysteries of Easter Island in a moment, here on A&E.
25 years together. They've just flown by. 25 years of kids, jobs, moving. I didn't just want to bring her back to her favorite place. I wanted to give her something she's only dreamt of.
The 25th anniversary diamond necklace.
Try the Olive Garden's new Mediterranean garlic shrimp, $8.95 for a short time. Enjoy tender shrimp, sautéed with roasted garlic and herbs on a bed of linguine, with free salad or soup and breadsticks. Part of the Italian summer menu, only at the Olive Garden.
In the Stanley Laboratories, we find out just how good our decorative mirror doors are by opening and closing them over 100,000 times. Funny, isn't that the same way you do it? Decorative mirror doors from Stanley.
I shall return.
Enjoying his sense of style, General Douglas MacArthur owned 23 uniforms, often changing 3 times a day. But he followed his instincts for war over fashion and reigned over 3 great wars before being dismissed by Truman.
Those soldiers never die. They just fade away.
General Douglas MacArthur, on an all-new biography tomorrow on A&E.
I was thinking about getting married again.
Bill, Marcia's 10 years older than you.
What difference does that make? Sometimes I wish my family wasn't so connected.
Mom says when you're 50, she'll be 60.
Talk to them, Sam.
Mom, what if he was 10 years older than her?
That's different.
She loves him, Mom. That's what matters.
The next day, I got a message, but it wasn't from me.
Marcia.
It said, "Welcome to the family, Marcia. Love, Mom and Dad."
You've always made a great team. Together growing, dreaming, caring, and sharing the rewards along the way. Park Avenue. For the comfort, for the luxury, for the quality. Congratulations, you've earned it. Buick Park Avenue.
Now, back to Ancient Mysteries and the story of Easter Island.
When the first horse was brought ashore by the Europeans, many islanders fled in terror. The ancestors, whose eyes had once controlled thousands, had no manner to protect them from what happened next. For the rest of the story, we have already told. One of the first acts of the missionaries was to shepherd their flock out of its island-wide clan settlements, away from the fallen Moai, pen them all together in a new town, and give them civilized names. The few survivors of the ravages of the 19th century have rebuilt themselves into a proud and distinct community. 36 families live to claim descent from the children of Hotumatua. Easter Island is a story of survival against the impossible and the improbable. Its people have adapted to the destruction of their world, the failure of one religion and the creation of another, and to the superimposition of a new and alien power on the remains of their old and familiar strength. Today, the islanders have taken in their stride the efforts of scientists, traders, sheep farmers, explorers, myth makers, and hordes of tourists that take in the navel of the world in an afternoon.
On the ship that are leaving this afternoon by ship, you take these 3 buses here.
And now, Western science prepares to put its final touch to this most isolated speck of land, to expose it to yet one more invasion. For the island runway has been modernized and extended. Easter Island is to be the Pacific emergency landing site of the USS Enterprise, the space shuttle.
His actions dashed the hopes for a united nation. John Brown leads the attack on Harper's Ferry on Civil War Journal tonight. Now, how does growing up in a Hollywood family compare with reality? Carrie Fisher talks with Martin Sheen, Penny Marshall, and George Lucas for an insider's view of life and love in Tinseltown. On the A&E special presentation, Carrie Fisher, The Hollywood Family. Next on A&E, it's time well spent.